Okay, so just because you see a car on the road often does not necessarily mean it's a good car. But it's a pretty good sign, right? So I saw a couple BMW i7s once in a while, and I ended up reviewing that car, and I thought it was really impressive. But I've seen a lot more of this. This is the BMW i5, the four-seater, slightly smaller electric sedan from BMW. Now, here's the thing. I want to say this again. I've said this in videos in the past. There are two types of electric cars, right? There are the ground-up EVs that are made on a new platform that are designed to be electric from the moment they're conceived. And then there are gas cars that are already existing that a manufacturer turns and makes an electric version of. So that's not really going to have as many benefits. The i5 and the i7 are in the second camp, but I think because the i7 was so big, it can get away with it more. The i5, you can start to feel a little bit less of those benefits, but turns out it's still a pretty good car. And if you're seeing a bunch of them on the road for $100,000, that's also a pretty good sign that it's a pretty good car. So I've been testing and driving this car right here. This is BMW's i5, and you can see the M badge right there. It's the M60, and fundamentally, some pretty solid specs, but I want you to think of this as a slightly shortened i7, because that's basically what it is, and there are some benefits and drawbacks that come with that. So it's gonna start at under $100,000 and spec'd right up to basically 100 grand. And you're gonna get about 600 horsepower with this quick one. You get a 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds. And the range, because it's smaller, it has a smaller battery, it's only about 230 to 240 miles. So that's already one of the downsides of being a little smaller than the i7 is it's a less competitive range. But then you of course get to the looks, because I mean, a lot of BMW people are starting to learn to love these looks, the big nostrils and performance look up here. Of course, this one is, it's an EV, it's just plastic, like it doesn't need a huge ton of vents. You've got real vents down here, real vents to the side, over here, but this is the BMW performance look right now, so you do get that. Also, huge hood, no front trunk. That's one of the downsides of not being a ground-up EV. It just feels like a lot of room wasted. But again, this is a 5 Series that got turned electric. So, got your big sticky Michelin tires, 255s at the front, 21s, 285 21s at the back. And then, I actually like this part here. If you walk up to the back of the car while it's locked and you've got the key with you, you can just give it one of those, and it should, open the power liftgate. To reveal a decent sized trunk. It's not the biggest trunk I've ever seen, but there is some sub-trunk space. Definitely pair of golf clubs worthy trunk right there. I think one of the things I've noticed about this car, as I close the power liftgate, it's very well equipped, just like the i7 was. Yes, it's expensive. 100 grand is not cheap, but all the little things, all of the comfort things, all of the luxury things you expect in a high-end car, this definitely still has all of them. So I'm happy to see that. But let me start by showing you the back seat of this car, because this is where you really start to appreciate the three main things that I keep noticing about this i5, which is 1, it's a smaller i7, 2, it's really well equipped, and 3, it's not a ground-up EV. Okay, so here's the back seat. I jump in behind the normal 6'3" driving position, and I've got a decent amount of legroom, not a ton of footroom. What I keep saying is this is a comfortable but not spacious back seat. It's comfortable, really well equipped. I mean, you look around, you've got obviously your physical air vents, USB-C here, but also look, more USB-C here. You've got this big glass roof that has a motorized shade if you want. These seats are super plush. You've got cup holders in here. You've got all these massive speakers with the Bowers & Wilkins sound system. And even when you close this door, they have the normal luxury car thing where you can like pull up the shade. I never use these, but you can pull up the shade. And there's that. But there's also this little mini shade in the back here too. Who does that? They've done everything they can as far as being well equipped and comfortable. It's not spacious, but it is pretty nice. Look down here between the seats in the back. There is this huge hump in the middle here, which is obviously in every gas car. You've got a transmission to get from the front to the rear wheels. I get that that has to be here, but in the EV, what is this here for? Why is this huge amount of space taken out? And that really makes the middle seat experience suffer. And obviously takes out of the legroom for both sides. What is that? You know, you could get away with that with the i7 because it's so much bigger of a car and it had this way longer wheelbase. So you had a ton of room in the back seat and it was totally fine. But in this one, it's a more reasonable size, so you kind of start to notice that more. But then we get to the driver's seat. And it's a good place to be in the i5 because this is a fun car to drive and they've kind of appropriately dressed it up as such. Really nice materials. There's carbon fiber everywhere. There's also the BMW thing of this little crystal screen selector, which lets you operate the screen, but also just reflects like crystal rainbow lights all over the car. Like here, look at all that. You get a ton of that. But from an owner's perspective, the i5 is fun. And like I keep saying, well equipped. So I'll just start with the downside right there. 75% battery, 164 miles of range. Not great. But again, the more you use this car, the more you realize, oh yeah, this is comfortable. This is well equipped. These seats are leather, they're super plush, they're really nice, they have a ton of adjustability, they're heated, they're cooled. I also found this interesting, and I think that they would probably say that this moves forward or backward to accommodate a helmet if you track this car, but you're not gonna track this car, let's be honest. Super nice materials. Again, you've got the speakers all the way around. You've got the ability to open or close that shade above your head for that glass sunroof. And then of course this steering wheel, I think it's pretty nice. It's a little thicker and bigger than I personally love, but I do love this little red stitching at 12 o'clock north. And there's a little boost paddle for when we talk about driving in a second. But yeah, HUD up front. You've got that power opening trunk. Just a lot of good stuff here. Very well equipped. No complaints about, like, you don't feel like you're not getting your money's worth. It's an expensive car, but they've kitted it out pretty nice. 2 wireless chargers up here. Wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and you just saw that I started accidentally doing the thing where you can gesture to change the volume because there's all this BMW tech up here that you may or may not choose to use. Cup holders, all the controls like I talked about, your mode selector, volume, and then a little bit of storage in the middle. Again, I feel like there could be more. Like, this is a huge center console. This is a massive amount of space you're taking out of the center of the car, but it doesn't really, I feel like I'm not taking advantage of any of the storage down here that you should have in an electric car. Because again, not a ground up EV. I think BMW's screens you can get used to if you're a BMW person, but they are borderline complicated for some things. And there's just a ton of settings if you dive into the car. Now, if you just want to do basic stuff, like this is still technically a physical control to control the HVAC direction. This is still like closing the vent or opening it though. So it's kind of a mix of virtual vents and real vents. Not my favorite, but it works. It's not terrible. But we should talk about just driving the i5, because if you buy the i5 over the i7, yes, you're getting a smaller car, and that, as we've shown, has some downsides, but it also has some upsides, meaning it's a little sportier, it's a little more fun to drive, and I enjoy driving it more. So this i5's got air suspension, it's got active dampers, it weighs a lot, it still has a huge battery, and it's 5,000 plus pounds, but it drives pretty well. I think it's actually the most torquey, low-end I've ever felt in an EV. If you just stab the accelerator pedal in sport driving mode, it legitimately hits you in the back of the head with the headrest. Like, you just slap forward. It's very athletic, and it still has a pretty light steering feel, and you feel like relatively nimble in this thing. Now, you're still going to get smoked in a straight line by other more competitive, especially ground-up EVs in the same price range. Like, okay, 100 grand, you could get a Model S Plaid. You could get a Lucid Air Grand Touring. You could get some others that just smoke it in a straight line. But you could argue this is more fun in things other than a straight line. This suspension handles potholes really well. I mean, that's something I'm going to keep noticing as I'm out here on New Jersey's imperfect roads. It handles potholes. It's a pretty compliant suspension. Driving the car is a good time, more than like the i7, which I would want to be in the back seat most of the time. And so I feel like that's the reason you would get this car. If you're okay with that not very competitive range, and you're okay with missing out on a lot of the EV-only features you get from a ground-up EV, like a front trunk, like a roomier back seat, like more storage in the center, and not having this center thing just blocking your footwell room. If you're okay with that, This is exactly what BMW would probably tell you. It's just an electric version of the 5 Series. So based on what I've seen and what I've enjoyed testing this car is in the good enough section for me. It's not gonna make like headlines for being amazing. Its driving dynamics are not mind-blowing. Its acceleration is not world-beating. It's just a comfortable, well-equipped, basic i5, and I have no issues with it really, other than the fact that it could be built ground up differently than this. So yeah, I'm giving a lot more credit to the ground up ones, but I think this is it's good enough. It's good enough. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.